It's 60 years since the last Atlantic Coast Express left Padstow and crossed this bridge over Little Petherick Creek. Today the name is celebrated in this coffee stall which stands on the route. Trains first reached the North Cornwall resort of Padstow in 1899. The Atlantic Coast Express started running 27 years later. After leaving Padstow at 8:30 in the morning, it shadowed the River Camel to Wadebridge, crossing the main street here before running into the station for its first stop. From here, the Ace, as it was known, followed the route of the railway towards Bodmin, which had opened in 1834, and veered off east here. It then stopped at all stations through Camelford and Lanson to Howell Junction. The journey of 50 miles took an hour and 50 minutes. Meanwhile, further up the coast in Bude and an hour later, another portion of the Atlantic Coast Express was preparing to leave. The Ace was said to be the most multi-portioned train in the country. It had been named after a competition organised by the Southern Railway. Bude station used to be here, but there's nothing left now. The housing estate bears the name of the man whose report led to the end of passenger services in North Cornwall by the last day of January 1967. The Atlantic Coast Express crossed this viaduct at Holsworthy on its way to meet the Padstow portion at Howell Junction. The journey from Bude took 40 minutes. The trackbed is now a nature reserve and most traces of the railway have long gone. The Junction Inn remains looking out over the station's site. Just a few minutes after arriving, the combined portions headed over the level crossing for Oakhampton and another rendezvous. The third portion of the Atlantic Coast Express started here in Plymouth just after 10 o'clock. It travelled along the southern route towards Oakhampton, where it met the combined Padstow and Bude portions. Its first stop was here at Devonport Kings Road, which is now part of Plymouth City College. Some walls and bridges remain to show that there was once a station here. On summer Saturdays in its heyday, the Atlantic Coast Express ran as separate trains to each one of its destinations, rather than as a combined service. Such was the demand from holidaymakers in the days before everybody had a car. From here, along the Tamar Valley through Bere Alston, where there was a connection for Callington, and then on to Tavistock. Here the Ace ran high over the town on this viaduct. It then called at the North Station, before heading on, skirting Dartmoor and arriving at Oakhampton just after 11 o'clock. Oakhampton Station has recently seen the return of train services to Exeter after a gap of almost 50 years. Here, the three portions of the elite train from Bude, Padstow and Plymouth were marshalled together before heading on to Exeter. Oakhampton Station had opened in 1871. The route south towards Plymouth was added 3 years later, with services to Holsworthy following in 1879. The line was extended to Lanson in 1866, Bude in 1898 and Padstow a year later. As the North Cornwall and Plymouth Ace left Oakhampton, another portion was making its way down from North Devon. At 10:30, the Ilfracombe carriages left the station high above the town. The site is now occupied by this factory. It was a hard climb for a loaded train up through Slade's Tunnel to the first stop at Morthoe and Woolacombe. A banking engine was often required for heavy expresses. At the same time as the Ilfracombe portion left the seaside resort, another train was preparing to depart from Torrington. Both arrived under this bridge at Barnstaple, where they were marshalled together, leaving at 11:15. Barnstaple Station retains much of its southern region heritage and still has an hourly service to and from Exeter. When the Atlantic Coast Express started running in 1926, Southern Railway King Arthur class locomotives were used to haul the carriages. After the Second World War, these were replaced by bullied Pacifics, although only the light, unrebuilt versions were allowed on the North Cornwall line. Both the North Cornwall and the North Devon portions of the Atlantic Coast Express passed through Crediton, seen here preserved in London and South Western colours. It was then on to Cowley Bridge Junction, Exeter St David's, and then an arrival at Exeter Central Station, where the North Cornwall and the North Devon portions were joined together for the journey towards London Waterloo, leaving at 12:30. Here, a more powerful Merchant Navy class locomotive was often added, along with a restaurant car. Further connections were made as the Ace headed east. At one time, through carriages ran to Exmouth and Sidmouth on the Jurassic coast. Sidmouth Station, seen here, opened in 1874, and it still stands even though the last train ran here in 1967. The Ace's first stop out of Exeter was at Sidmouth Junction, which is now called Fenniton. Here connections were made with the branch line trains from Exmouth, Ottery St Mary, Budleigh Salterton and Sidmouth. From here, the train only stopped at Salisbury on its way to Waterloo, arriving at around 3:30 in the afternoon. Today, a Merchant Navy class engine bearing the Ace nameplate is at the National Railway Museum in York, and a poster displayed at the Bodmin and Wenford Railway reminds us of this once great train.